What is desktop publishing and how can you apply it? Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today I will explain a concept that you all should know if you work in localization, which is called DTP, desktop publishing. Whether you realize it or not, DTP plays a huge role in everything print or digital that you see, like brochures, flyers, website, etc. It's all gone through a desktop publishing process. To put very simply, DTP is the process that uses a software, computer software, to make a product like a brochure or a flyer ready and high quality for print or online distribution. Of course, this goes far beyond basic word processing that we usually do as translators, right? You have to take into account colors, design, typography, layout, visual elements, etc. The most frequently used tool by far to do that is Adobe InDesign. They kind of have a monopoly there. Most of my clients that do this and that I offer it through them as well is done with InDesign. There are a couple of other softwares that are also industry standard. The next big one is probably Quark Express. But Adobe InDesign is the one to know if you want to get into this. So DTP is very heavily linked to design, right? It allows designers to control everything in the whole design process, from the color, the font, the visuals that they want to use. So you might ask yourself, why is this important for us in the localization process? And I'm going to go into that in a second, how the two combine. But first, I think it's important that you know a couple of key concepts within DTP so you can familiarize yourself with the service. At the heart of every DTP project is layout. Layout obviously refers to the arrangement of text and visual elements in a publication, right? Within layout, there are two major factors that, of course, affect how the layout looks like. That's grids and margins. Margins are the spaces around the edges, and grids is like a grid, like you can imagine like a grid over a project, so you can structure your visuals in a aesthetically pleasing way if you use grids overlay over your project. Another very important concept in DTP is alignment. Alignment refers to kind of a red thread that guides you through the document. A great alignment in a design should guide the viewer to where he or she should look, right? You as a designer, you want maybe have something that pops immediately where the attention focuses on first. Maybe it's not top left. Usually people, like a document, you would start reading top left, right? But a flyer has usually a point of interest that attracts your attention. And then if the DTP is done properly, it will slowly guide you, like the designer will exactly know where you will look next, right? So all the necessary information come into a funnel system, and at the end is the key information. Another huge factor in desktop publishing is typography, meaning the choice of font, so what your letters actually look like. But not only the choice, but also the size of the font, the spacing in between the letters. All this has are design choices and have effect on the viewers. For example, if you use more traditional fonts, I think serif fonts they are called. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but that's how I read it at least. They usually have a little line at the end of the letters. You know, it becomes very traditional, more professional as well. Whereas sans serif fonts without the little lines at the end are more modern and more, eye-catching and smooth as well, less traditional. So these are all design choices that you have to make as a DTP specialist. Also, how large you want the fonts to be without being overwhelming, right? How can you catch the right amount of attention without leaving everything else behind? These are very important choices to make, less in localization DTP, but really in design DTP. So let's look at the difference there. So how does this affect us as translators, or let's say as localizers? Because translation is not really DTP is not part of translation, but it can be part of localization if you offer the complete package. Now, let's say you want to offer DTP as a service. You can do that as a standalone service, but then you really need to be an expert in it. That takes some getting used to it, maybe take some classes into it. But if you offer especially your direct clients, if you offer them a complete package, so they give you a brochure and you send the same brochure back, DTP should be included in that service. So that's why you never charge a complete package by the word, because there is so much around happening. that you're not paid if you charge by the word. So if you offer complete package, you give usually a fixed price of the overall thing, or you can charge by the hour if they want more transparency, but never by the word. But because DTP can be a large chunk of an overall project. Let's look more into that. So let's imagine you're a translator, freelance translator, and you work for a dentistry office. So the dentist sends you a nice, beautifully 2-page foldable flyer, very glossy, perfectly designed, of their product, of their locations, maybe of their team, and you are tasked with the translation of this pliable flyer. Now, for some companies or for some clients, you can work directly in their CMS or in their InDesign. In that case, a lot of the DTP is done while translation. So it's kind of a similar process, because you see, like if you have a text field, you see exactly how much space you have when you're translating in the software, right? You know what it will look like in the end. But most likely that's not the case, right? It's relatively rare that I can work directly in the CMS or in the InDesign of my clients. Usually I get the flyer and I would import it into my CAD tool and then export it again into my own document and deliver it, right? And in that case, DTP comes into play massively. Because imagine if you import a flyer into a CAD tool, you have no reference anymore what it will look like in the end. You might have a preview monitor at the bottom of MemoQ if you're using it, for example, but that doesn't really help you when you do the translation. Also, some fonts might not be imported properly and then exported differently. So usually if you import something and export the flyer again, it will look nothing like the original. It will not be perfectly polished like the original was. And then you have to do the DTP yourself, because you want to deliver the same high quality document that you got if you offer a comprehensive service, right? Because they might not have done the DTP in-house, so they don't want to go back to their marketing agency and have the DTP done with the translation as well. So they rely on you delivering a finished product. Now, DTP after localization can require some massive changes, because imagine simply if you work with an RTL language, so a right to left language, right? For example, Arabic, Farsi, Hebrew, these are all right to left languages. And so they are read from right to left rather from left to right. So imagine if you export a document, it will be all over the place. So especially with RTL languages, the DTP process can take significant amount of time. You might even want to check with your client if you should do that, if they expect it from you, but most likely they do, because you understand what's being translated, right? If you give that back to your client and they have to do the DTP without understanding the language, it's very hard. But not only R2L languages need to be considered, also consider colors, for example, right? Color theory is huge in DTP. For print material, you usually use CMYK color schemes. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key is black, basically. Whereas for non-print, so digital media, you use RGBs, so red, green, blue color schemes, right? They are designed to work for digital displays, and that can impact your localization a lot. For example, imagine white. I think I mentioned that on the channel before once. A Japanese person told me that white is considered very somber. It's associated with death in Japan. So what do you imagine a Western European dentistry flyer would look like? It would be very white focused, right? So you might want to check back with the client and say, in Japan, this flyer would not run well. You might want to change the color scheme. What can we do here? So if you offer the full package, that's part of your localization duty to go back to the client and talk about these choices. Another example is characters, right? Certain languages have characters that might not be recognized by certain fonts that are used by a company. So if you work, for example, with an Asian language or a Slavic language, that might not be displayed properly with this font, and then the whole export looks like completely out of place, right? There is nothing you can do with that. You need to change the font. But of course, you have to talk back first with the clients. You can't just, choose any font. They might want to use a font that works with their company, with their brand image. So these are all questions that you have to do with DTP. A lot of questions and asking back with the client comes into play, because you're not the one to make these company-wide decisions. You're just the ones that should tell the client that something needs to be done in that case. One thing that I struggle with a lot with German DTP is that German tends to be like 10 to 20% longer than English. And you can imagine with like descriptions, headings, space in a text field, it usually doesn't fit, right? You can try to make the translation significantly shorter. With subtitling, I have to do that a lot, cut a lot of the fluff out so that it actually fits the screen. And in DTP that's the same, but sometimes it just doesn't work. You don't want to cut things because it just doesn't work with the style, with the register. Maybe you really need all the information in product descriptions, it's very important, or in legal advice you really need everything perfectly in there. And if it doesn't fit on the bottle, let's say of a bottle with a legal disclaimer on it, and it doesn't fit and it just gets cut off and a big chunk is missing, that could have really dire consequences, right? So in all of these very visible things, you need to be sure to ask back with the client what the best approach would be here. There you go. In summary, DTP, desktop publishing, refers to the process of designing a very visible print or digital display, perfectly beautiful, glossy, how it should be. And in the localization context, if it refers to the same process, but after having translated it, so it fits the purpose of the culture of the country that you want to publish it in. I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you are already working with DTP. I'm not actively promoting it that I offer this service, but I do offer like the complete package for some of my direct clients, and there it's simply implied that this has to be done, and I definitely do it. I often ask a lot of questions when it comes to it, and they're surprised that I'm so proactive and asking them things that could potentially get them into trouble. But every single one is happy about that, so make sure to ask a lot of questions and don't shy back. Don't make assumptions. Assumptions are bad in translation. Always either make a comment or ask a question. I hope this explanation was helpful, and I see you next Monday with the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.